Today, Mac is going to show us dog sledding and his experiences, and I will apologize again to him for taking liberties with the promo material for it. But I was having fun, and I'm not kidding. When I was a kid, Sergeant Preston and that kind of stuff was a big deal. And I got to apologize. I sent that one video to the sergeant link to a Sergeant Preston video titled One Bean Too Many or something like that. And I watched the video after that, and there was no reference to beans or to, and it was a summertime thing. So there was no
Well,
dog sled. So that was disappointing.
let me
Dan, a
get
little
my
bit of,
All right.
sorry, me?
Okay. Mac is ready to do his
yep,
presentation. So Graham, save that.
I
And
can't leave this on for too long because it's quite warm.
so without any further ado, Mac.
Okay, so you should see a nice map there.
Yep.
And so we are down here in Seattle, and this is Whitehorse, Yukon Territory. So the way we got up there was to go to Vancouver and fly up for 2.5 odd hours.
So is
So
this in Alaska or
no, this is in Yukon
Canada?
Territory. It is not Alaska. Don't even say Alaska to anybody from the Yukon. They don't like it.
Huh. Part of Alaska is called the Yukon, though.
Yeah, we won't go there.
No. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is Whitehorse, and this is Lake Labarge, which is about 5 miles long, and I think it's about 40 miles long. And it's part of the Yukon River that actually starts down here-ish, and it runs this way and winds up in the Gulf of Alaska, if I remember rightly. But it runs north, which is kind of unusual. So, let me go to Google Earth. Um, so when we fly in, we come into Whitehorse and we go up this road here, and we go into a little cove here where we're met by the Cathers who run the dog sledding operation, and they homestead on the other side of Lake Labarge. They're the only people that live there full time. So let me go one more. This is as good as Google Earth gets. Um, their operation is right in here, and these are actually some of the buildings, but that's as good resolution as you can get, which is
Mac,
slightly unfortunately.
I forgot to ask, do you want questions during your presentation or for
Yeah,
us to?
whenever.
Okay. So you said this lake is 5 miles across here?
Whoops. Yeah. So
How,
you start from here, and it's frozen to a depth of about 3 feet,
oh,
and you either on snow machine or dog sleds, you're met here. Oops. Oh, stop that. PowerPoint keeps sneaking up on me. Um, and you go out across around the end of Richthofen Island and across over to their place on the other side.
is that named after the Baron?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
know. I meant to look that up and I forgot. Anyway, so this is where we are, and you come ashore here and go up to the main cabins. Um, this is Ned and Janine, who are the primary guides. Ned is, let's see, he is 78 now. Janine is about 51. Um, both of them have run the Yukon Quest, which is the big brother to the Iditarod, multiple times. They didn't place first ever, but they did place in the money a few times. And I think Ned scratched once, and Janine never did. I think she ran it 7 times. And she was, at that time, the youngest person that had ever run it, because you have to be 18. And she ran it, I think, a month after her birthday. And The Quest is like the Iditarod. It's a 1,000-mile race. Unlike the Iditarod, it is not just between checkpoints. You actually have to overnight on the trail several nights. So you have to have everything with you. And the course is a lot more brutal than the Iditarod. So it's an interesting race.
Cool.
Anyway, so equipment. This is a pretty modern dog sled. Pretty simple. Uh, on the
Makes
back,
it modern
it's
compared to.
made of metal. You'll see.
Okay.
This is. These have been in service for a while. Obviously, they're a little beat around the edges. Here's what the bottom looks like. This is a sheet of UHMW plastic, and the runners are actually wood, and they have a dovetail in them, and this black piece here is plastic that slides into the dovetail, and you can put different types of plastic in there depending on what your snow conditions and things are. Let's see, here's a more traditional one, which is a mix of construction techniques. You see, it's wood. These are actually lashed together. Originally, that was done with gut, which was wet, and then as it dried out, it tightened up. And on this one, the UHMW is right down on top of the runners. On the modern sleds, it's actually spaced up. So they do handle rather differently, and also these ones are a lot more flexible. The whole frame is very flexible. This is again another more modern one somewhere in here. Here's an absolutely bright, shiny, brand new one. So without the cargo bag. As you can see, it's mostly aluminum, or as they say up there, aluminium. And this hoop here with the bungee cord to pull it up with the two spikes is the brake. So you stand on that and it jams those two spikes down into the snow. It's quite effective. This one
The
doesn't.
saw teeth are for your shoes, boots?
These are just traction things you have to stand on. Yeah, because otherwise you'd slip right off of the runner. Those are rubber.
So you're not all the way to the back of the runners
It
when
depends.
you're.
It depends.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a
Oh,
little unusual. Most of them have longer ones like that.
huh.
Yeah, this one. This
Yeah.
modern. So this one, you can see the drag here, and that's usually a piece of cast-off snow machine tread, and it's on chains or some kind of attachment to the structure of the sled in here. But the whole thing is fairly flexible. And let's see, in the new one here, yeah, there's a close-up of the brake arrangement.
Oh, yeah.
It's all
So the
pretty.
brake is in front of the drag.
Yes,
Okay.
and the brake is just, it's a pretty brute force arrangement. The drag, you can do fairly subtle things with it by standing on one side or the other and actually pull the head of the sled one way or the other.
Huh.
Also by leaning out and tipping the sled. And then you see this is where the gang line attaches, and you notice this goes through the UHMW and ties in again to that center structural point. So the thrust is taken there. And the
Gang line is for the dogs? Gang line?
gang line is what attaches to the dogs, and it's
Okay.
typically 1/8-inch aircraft cable.
Huh.
The bow here is sort of for bouncing off things, but you try not to do it too much. But aside from the runners and the runners are typically laid up from wood and are pretty precise. Aside from that, though, it's really a pretty simple device.
Hmm.
And again, you can see this one has got the bottom pan spaced up from the runners. Personally, I prefer the ones with the bottom pan right on the runners because I find they're a little more stable.
Hmm.
Mostly, something I found out really fast the first year I was up there was that an empty sled is damn near impossible to control. So I pretty quickly resorted to putting either 1 or 2 50-pound bags of dog food in the bottom of the bag, and that does wonders for things.
Because it bounces around too much? It's too light?
It's too light, and one of the things you need to do is to sort of hike out and throw the sled a little bit, and if there's no weight in it, it just wants to fall over.
Mm,
And
right,
with some weight there, it'll go back down.
right. Gary asks in the chat, is there a governing body with specs for the sleds? Like crash test, Gary? Or what?
I think
like rules for,
cra-
if you race Indianapolis 500, they have very strict rules for how your machine can be built.
I don't know.
There
I
must
think
be something for the races, but not for just going out in the woods.
I suspect there are rules for the races, and apparently the plastic that the runners are made out of does make a significant difference, but at least on the level that we were doing it, nobody was worried about that. And as you just saw, there's quite a variety of sleds that have been around for some of them a long time. I think their oldest sled is about 50 years old, although it has had new runners. And apparently there are only about 3 or 4 people that make these curved runners that are any good. Anyway, so motive power. That's a young dog, but probably about a 2-year-old, but she'll run. This was Muffin, who is one of our favorites. This is the Wave. She's quite enthusiastic about things.
Are these dogs friendly dogs to people, or are they strictly?
They're not pets. They're
Yeah,
working dogs, but they're friendly. They're not. I mean, they're not. Well, normally they're not aggressive with people at all. Like anything else, you have exceptions, but they like to hang out on top of their dog houses, and they live outdoors all the time. Depending on the temperature, they will either go into their house or turn into a very small donut in the snow. But even at 40 below, they're fine.
amazing.
And you can see many kennels out here. The first couple years we were up there, they had, I think, 88 dogs. They have fewer now because they haven't been doing much the last few years. And these cages here are the heat pens. So when a dog goes into heat, if they don't want to breed her, they stick her in the pens. And if you want to run a dog that's in heat in a team, it's interesting because all of the males want to go after her.
As opposed to run.
Yeah.
Pull the sled. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she'd be the front dog, I suppose.
So they chase her all the
Yeah.
time. Is that true?
Well, sometimes, yeah.
Oh.
How many truckloads of dog food get delivered a week?
It's not delivered. Anything as I say, they are the only people that live on the east side of Lake Labarge. There are no roads in there. Anything that comes in comes across the lake in a skimmer behind a snow machine or on a dog sled, or in the summer it comes across by boat. And there are a couple of months a year at least during freeze up and break up in the fall and spring respectively, where they basically can't count on bringing any fresh supplies in. So they have to bring everything they need in to get through about 2 months with no resupply. There is a back way in, but it's a brutal trail. And it's not practical for hauling anything through.
Mac, those sleds that you showed us earlier, can those actually hold enough provisions for a 1,000-mile journey?
Yes. Actually, they wouldn't be expected to do the full 1,000 miles off the provisions for that they would carry with them, but they would be expected to take enough stuff to have at least 2 or 3 days out on the trail. But
So they would pick up additional provisions along
yeah,
along the way?
yeah. Yeah, the Iditarod has checkpoints. It's basically a race run between checkpoints, and they don't really have to carry supplies. The Yukon Quest has, I think it's 12 or 13 checkpoints in 1,000 miles, and they can resupply at those points. But they are expected to stay out on the trail for multiple nights. So they have to carry everything to feed the dogs. They carry straw for the dogs to bed down on. They carry stuff to feed themselves. They'll carry, I mean, a dog sled, you can carry 300 to 400 pounds of stuff. And they'll typically be running 12 dogs and sometimes more for that. And that is a huge amount of power.
Can you talk about the checkpoint thing difference? I'm inferring from what you say that on the Iditarod, they go from here to there, and then they either go back to some place or they hang out in a hotel or something.
Oh no, they don't. No, they don't hang out in a hotel. They go from point to point, and then they wait sometimes, and sometimes they just bounce there and grab some food and stuff, and then go on to the next stage.
But they have a crew that meets them at the checkpoint.
Yeah.
Each racer has a crew.
Yep.
Okay.
Or frequently,
then,
that's not always, but.
And is there a day or so between starting?
There are mandated rests on the Iditarod, but
okay.
I don't know exactly what the schedule is, but it's.
And how about the Quest? How is that different?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
not.
Tim?
Yeah, I'd have to look. I know that it's a lot simpler. It's much closer to just getting it done.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to.
Before you put that away, do you want to describe it to us? That's a official dog sled hat.
No, it's not an official dog sled hat. It's a nice, very warm hat which has flaps that you can put down over your ears, and it has this fuzzy place in here which actually collects a lot of. If you're exhaling, the moisture wants to find a place to freeze, and this is a good place. When I was up there, I know I've got a picture somewhere, but I couldn't find it. I've got a picture of myself with my beard completely frozen with ice from being out on the trail.
And is that a Canadian hat or
Oh God!
is that what everybody wears, or
no.
something like it?
No, it's it's very freeform. It's whatever you want.
Okay.
I remember where I got this. It's
Is it reindeer or sheep or something?
You know, well, it was made in Turkey, of all places. So go figure.
I didn't realize the Yukon had an active trade with Turkey. So that's good.
And the goat.
Yeah.
Gordon, did you say something?
It'd be made out of goat, probably, if it's
Goat.
from Turkey.
Right. Right.
Could be, but the fuzzy part doesn't seem right for goat. Anyway.
Okay.
So the fun part, or one of the fun parts, is getting your team together. So this red device here is the harness, which you see this dog has one on. It goes around through their legs, and then there's a fairly elaborate arrangement that comes back along here. Whoops, blast. And the actual pull point winds up being just ahead of their haunches. So all of the thrust is taken from essentially their chest back to that pull point. And so this is the fun part of getting it on. This is our friend Amanda, who was a good friend of ours. She and her sons actually wound up living with us here for about 9 years. And the pink parka was a bit of, you'll see Ruth has one as well. The first time we went up, Ruth and Amanda had gone over to REI to get parkas. And REI, somebody had ordered these pink parkas and nobody wanted them. So they were being remaindered at 10% of the original price, and they were like a $300 parka. So they said, well, that's a deal. So they figured they could deal with it being pink. Well, when we arrived at the side of Lake Labarge, there was a van that met us at the airport and took us up the west side. And Ned and Janine met us there, and Ned took one look at these people decamping in the pink parkas, and I was watching and he just shook his head. He had no idea what to expect. He was quite skeptical, but they made believers of him.
And the pink parkas held up? They were built strong enough?
Yes, they're actually, Ruth is still using hers, and she's been doing it for 11 years.
Cool.
It's a little beat up around the edges, but it's still fine. It's still warm. It has been patched a few times. Anyway,
awesome.
So getting the harness on can be interesting. This is a big dog. That's an unusually big husky. And some of them more excited about getting the harness on than others. So he's looking a little skeptical about this, but so got it around his neck, and then working on getting both legs in. Sometimes you get one leg in and they're not really excited about the second one, and the other dog here is encouraging them. But anyway, there it is, all harnessed up. So that's a four-dog team. There's the fourth dog is hiding in the back there. So that's pretty well put together. And when you're putting them together, this is the gang line that runs up through. Each dog has the pull line, and then they have a neck line too, which basically keeps them in line. But before you go, you have them tied out, because if you don't, they will get into a lot of mischief, and if they go around a few times, you can spend hours disentangling that line. And it's not pleasant work because it's cold.
So what do you mean tied up? You have them tied up?
See the chain out here?
Yes.
That goes over to a post. So there's tension all the way back down the gang line, and the sled is tied back to this post.
Okay.
Which is a very stout post.
Yes.
It's set into the ground at least 3 feet. And there's a trick slip knot that you wind up with a tail and you pull it and it releases smoothly. which is essential because there's a lot of pressure on it when the dogs think they're ready to go.
Mhm.
Mac,
'Cause they're
how
eager to
much
run.
would
Go ahead.
how much would a 4-dog team be able to pull in terms of weight of the sled and the occupant and the provisions?
It varies a lot with the dogs. I mean, some dogs are a lot more powerful than others. Um, a 4-dog team is pretty light. You wouldn't want to be having a whole lot of provisions, and if you're on a steep trail, you're gonna do some running. I was when I got comfortable with it, with my 100 pounds of stuff in the sled, I was typically running 6 dogs, and at that point, you don't have to get off and run up hills much. So, as I
Is
say,
it
the big teams, they'll take several 100 pounds of gear.
is it more hard? Is it more difficult to control 6 dogs versus 4 and 12 dogs versus 6?
Yeah, I drove 10-dog team once, and it was interesting because they're a long way out there. I mean, you can see how far apart each pair of dogs is. And so if you got 6 dogs, if they're paired, which usually they are, sometimes you have dogs that don't get along very well, so you have a single dog. And I think that's what's going on here. Looks like this dog is here and this one is back in wheel position. The dogs closest to the sled, that's called the wheel position. And then you've got the leaders. And there is a name for the people in the middle, but I forget what it is. But yeah.
You were talking about how you did a 10 dog team
Yeah.
once, and the
Yeah.
difficulty
So
of
that's like 60 feet out in front for the leaders. And trying to think that much ahead on a trail where a lot of places there are bends in the trail and you can't see where they are. And that's one thing. The commands are pretty simple. It's G and haw for go right, go left, and whoa for stop, accompanied by a liberal application of the brake. One thing that a lot of people want to do is when they take off, they want to yell go, go, go. That's a bad idea because that sounds a lot like whoa, and it confuses the hell out of the dogs.
There's no command for go straight?
Yes, there is. That's the general command to go is straight ahead, and they all know that.
straight ahead, that phrase?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean not like Sergeant Preston, who would holler, "On you Huskies"?
Yeah.
Yeah, on would probably be okay because it doesn't sound like anything else. But and every now and again you'll get somebody that actually yells mush, but the dogs don't really care. It sounds good. Ned has done stunt driving for a bunch of films up there, and he said everybody wants to yell mush, but the reality is not very many people do that are really doing it.
Were they doing it in the early days? Because where did it came from? Somewhere.
I don't know. I don't know where the term mushing comes from. Another thing I should have looked up. So anyway, so we got team.
Question about that picture there. So that normally the dogs would be in pairs side by side.
Yes.
But sometimes they're single file.
Yeah, because you have dogs that don't necessarily want to run next to each other, i.e., they don't like each other much.
So you'd never have all single file. It would only be because the dogs didn't get along.
Right.
Okay.
And you usually want a pair like this in wheel because they're closest to the sled and they have a lot to do with where the front end of the sled is going. If you've got a a single dog there's a lot of tension in the gang line. It tends to pull them into the corner. And I actually had a pair of dogs, Scout and Sackett, that I drove a lot, that I loved, because they had the very useful characteristic of going wide on the turns. So they would pull pull the nose of the sled around where you wanted it, rather than pulling it into the turn. And I thought they were great. Nobody could figure out why I was having a better time on the trails than anybody else, but that was why. It wasn't anything I was doing.
If they pull you into the corner rather than wide, then you're doing the equivalent of going over the curb, which could be ugly
Yep.
on a trail.
Yeah,
with trees and stuff.
especially if it's a tree. You'll see in some of the later slides what some of the trails look like.
Okay, cool. This is great. Thank you.
So anyway, this is the same team. These are the dogs in the middle and the leaders. Now, this is an interesting match, but
because
they work together. Just the disparate size between them. This is a big dog. That is unusual. I mean, Huskies are usually around 50 pounds or less. And they're just all power.
How do you know if a dog doesn't particularly want to run side by side? I mean, if one of the dogs doesn't like his mate, does he not like going side by side with any of the other dogs?
It varies, and they're dogs. They all have personalities, and Ned and Janine, they know all of their dogs really well, and so building up a good team is an art, and they have to rotate them because they need to keep everybody needs to get exercise. So the first and second time I was up there were quite a few people there. There were 5 of us, and then I think 6 or 7 other guests at the same time. So they were putting out multiple teams every day, and to the point where Ned and I wound up rebuilding a sled that somebody had pranked, so they had enough sleds to go around.
They rotate the dogs amongst the sleds to be with other ones, or do they all like to work together always?
No. It's
okay.
There are definite personalities.
There's a huge amount of psychology in this.
Oh yeah. Okay, so here's another setup, pretty much ready to go. He's being a little vocal. See all the other dogs. You're setting up right in the middle of the dog yard, so all the dogs think this is a swell time, and so that was a small sample of what it sounds like.
Well, you know why they're barking. Their feet, they're going, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold.
that actually, by the way, I took it down a bunch in level because it is deafening. If you got 60 or 70 dogs, and the ones that are in teams are happy they're going to go, they're excited, they're barking. All the other dogs in the kennels or in the yard are like, wait a minute, I want to go too, so they bark. So it's it's quite a thing.
So they're excited to go. They're not reluctant at all.
Oh no, when you go down to their yard to take them, they're chained in the yard. Each one has a post. When you take them off, you better have a darn good hold on their collar, because they will take you off your feet instantly. It's a bit of a wrestling match to get them up to where they get harnessed up.
So they're ready to go right now.
Oh yeah.
Always. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So okay, so we got some teams made up, and she's checking the knot on the post there, And then it's time to go. This is a different day with more teams going out.
These are cool sequences.
And now we're out on the trail. So you can see that the trails are nice and windy, pretty close to the trees, and intentionally sometimes if trees come down across them, they don't necessarily clear them off all the way. They clear them enough to clear the handlebars. So you better be prepared.
Threading the needle there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the dogs, it's interesting. The minute you pull the rope and they start forward, there's no more barking. They just put their heads down and go. It's totally quiet.
So on the trail, they're totally quiet.
Yep.
Almost all the time.
Yep.
What if a bunny runs across the trail?
Usually it's okay. Every now and again you get a leader that gets distracted. And that can get to be pretty exciting, trying to get a team back onto the trail after they've, because where one goes, if a leader goes, that's it. The whole group is going to go, and you get on the brake, throw your sled over, and throw the snow hook over. And there's a thing that is, it's very much like an anchor. It's called a snow hook, and you put it down on the ground, you stomp it down, but before you set that out, you get your sled over on the side, because that makes a pretty good brake too, especially if you're in soft snow.
Where does the snow hook ride during the...
Oh, it lives in the bag there. You have to reach in and get it.
Okay. But it's
That's
pretty
all right.
quick to grab and throw. It's attached already.
Yeah, actually, you want to be stopped before you set the snow hook. It's not a brake.
Okay.
It's an anchor. This is actually on one of the lakes up in the hills.
And these dogs are running or loping. They're not walking.
It's a fast trot. I would say it's a fast jog, not quite a run. Oh no, it's actually a mild run for a person. Having tried to catch up to some dogs. Back up in the hills. You can see that the trails are kind of interesting. Some of them. Oh yeah, and there's an obstacle there, tree down across the trail. Let me just go over it. It's a pretty good bump.
Dogs just go over it. The sled also would go.
Yep, sure does.
Okay.
But you got to watch out, because if you slide off it wrong, it'll throw you right off the trail, or tip you over.
Because there's such a thing as being able to take somebody for a ride on the sled.
Sure, they do it all the time. Yeah, so somewhere there was one day Ruth pranged her arm on a tree, and she went out as a passenger, and so she got some pictures from a slightly different viewpoint. And I wish I had more pictures of people doing really interesting things on the sleds, because there's a fair amount of body English involved on some of those corners and trails, and you are banking the sled to get it to go where you want. Oh yes, somebody got distracted. I don't know if it was a squirrel or what it was, and this was actually Ruth took this when she was going out as a passenger, but something happened, and that wheel dog thought he or she had something interesting, so everything came to a screeching halt. So it does happen.
How quickly does the sled stop when something like that happens so that you don't run over the dog?
It depends on how good your reflexes are.
Huh.
I mean, the two commandments of dog sledding is you never let go of the sled, and you make sure you never overrun the dogs. Because the sled is, even by itself, the sled is probably around 100 pounds. It could do a lot of damage to a dog. And if they go down a hill, the sled will overtake them if you're not on the brake or the drag. So, but I mean, I got dragged about a half mile with the sled on its side because I was not turning loose of that sled, and I did manage to kick it back up and get myself back on. It was a struggle, but you don't let go of the sled.
While it was moving, you kicked it back up.
Yeah.
Wow.
There are some tricks.
I take it the dogs will never stop if you do let go of the sled. They'll just be off ski like any husky. They just keep going until they either find something to hunt or a bow hit.
Or they wrap the sled around something, or unless something stops them, they're going to go.
Yeah.
It's just the way they are.
One of my neighbors' huskies got out and was found 50 miles away, but 3 days later,
Yeah, well, our two dogs, we've got one husky and a mix boxer. I'm quite careful not to let them both out at the same time, off lead. But the other day, when I took out the garbage, I forgot to close the gate in the side yard. And I turned them out, and they were gone. And they did about 4 miles. Fortunately, I've got a GPS tracker on one of them that lets me know where they are. So I figured out which way they're headed and drove out there and waited for a little bit. Hi, guys.
Who called the taxi?
Yeah. So this is the ridge trail for obvious reasons, and it runs along. It swoops down through a little valley there and then up, and it goes along the ridge for probably 3 or 4 miles. And this is Lake Labarge over here. It's gorgeous country up there. And this here, and if you look right here, you'll see a tree. You'll see this trail that zips around the tree, and it actually zips around another tree and then goes on up. And if you look closely at the tree, which you can't see here, you will see that tree is kind of dinged up on the side there, because a number of people have come up against it.
It's been debarked.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So this is out on the edge of the lake. Not quite sure why we were down there, because driving on the lake is really pretty boring. That really is the one place where you pretty much do stand on the runners, except that you get little frost heaves and things, so you can't be completely complacent about it. But what she's doing is going off and finding a place to tie off the dogs so they don't turn themselves into a big snarl of cable. She's got the sled over its side, and this is a snow hook out here. And picnic by the lake. It's my wife Ruth and our friend Amanda. And me with and so this is the place. This is the main house. They've got sort of a greenhouse arrangement. There is now another cabin back here, and then coming around, there's an outhouse here, and then there's another cabin right there. I take it back. That's not an outhouse. That's a little storage shed, cabin, outhouse is there. That's the main cabin. That's where we stayed the 4 times I went up. Ruth is now in a different cabin up closer to the dog yard. But this is, it's pretty simple. Bunk beds. And there were 5 of us that stayed here for about a week and a half. As you can see, it's all about keeping things dry, because you go out, things get wet, and the stove and the wood is the source of heat. And you pretty quickly develop a sense of when things are starting to get too cool, and you wake up and get up and put some more wood in the fire. It was probably running about 20, 25 below, when Celsius, that is, when I was up there.
Are you taking water with you out on the trail?
Oh yeah.
How do you keep it from freezing?
Carry it inside. Put it
In your coat?
Yeah, put it inside your parka.
Okay.
And the dogs will lean out and scoop up snow as they're going along. They don't even slow down. It's pretty amazing.
And that's enough moisture for them.
Yeah. And Ye outhouse, which is probably 20 odd feet from the cabin. Yeah, trundle out there in the middle of the night at minus 20 odd. You don't hang around for a long time.
This is not a trip for people with bladder problems.
No. Although this is my wife Ruth, who had a total colectomy, so she uses the bathroom quite a bit, and she dealt with it just fine. You note the boots. The boots are good, allegedly good to minus 100, and it's a depending on how cold it actually is, it's either a double or a triple layer that come with both, and boots inside. And they have a couple of horses. I'm not entirely sure why. Ned allegedly uses them for hauling things and things like that, but I think that's mostly in the summer. I think it's mostly because he wanted horses. This was on an overnight trip, and the dogs make themselves little holes, and actually if they get up, usually if it's going to be really cold, you take straw out and you put straw down for them to lie down on. So it isn't super cold because they're not completely turned into little donuts. You can tell pretty close how cold it is by how small the dog is. They just keep tucking in closer and closer. And if it's really cold, you can hardly tell where their nose is. Usually you can tell because of the ears, but the nose is completely buried underneath the tail to keep warm. Okay, so it looks like she's only running a 4-dog team and going up the hill. This is a very steep hill, so she's actually off and running alongside. But got up to the getting up to the ridge trail. And another scenic bit. Okay, so water. They have running water, and here it is. And they keep a hole open, and they haul it up in a bucket, transfer it to another bucket, and carry it up to the cabins. That's where the water comes from.
So this is home, not out on the trail.
Yeah. Yep, that's me on the lake.
Boiling that or something?
Yeah, they do generally boil it, yeah. And sometimes they bring water across from their son's well on the other side of the lake. And this was probably headed back after the trip up there. So the last run back across the lake to get back to the van to pick us up. And then after they drop us off, they deadhead the sleds back to the homestead ahead of a snow machine. And then there's a skimmer behind the snow machine, and you note the bale of hay for the horses. So, if you're curious, that's who they are, cathersadventures.com, and their website has got a lot of really good pictures too. But it's a kick. It really is. I enjoyed it a lot. And just after, as I say, I was up there 4 times, and then things just got busy enough that I couldn't take 3 weeks off, because Ruth kept escalating how long she stayed up there. This time she's up there for a month.
So she's still there?
Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, let's see, she's probably just about finishing a run right now. She sent me a message when they headed off, and that was about 3 hours ago. So
I have a question.
Sure.
How fast do these dog sleds get going? Unless, I hope nobody else asked that already.
On launch, when they take off, it's, I would say, well beyond a sprint for a really fast runner.
Oh, so they're really going.
Oh yeah.
And you're hanging on.
Yeah, actually, I've got another couple more slides here.
But when you get out there on the snow and out on the trail,
they just lope along. I'd say it's probably 7-8 miles an hour, something like that.
Okay. Thanks.
So this is hooking up supply run. They have a generator that they run 3 or 4 hours a night just to keep things up. They've got a small PV array up on the roof, but that's just to keep their radio connection, which is, they do have internet, so that's how they get that. But they go through a fair amount of fuel. So here's a launch with a 6-dog team, and you can see they are moving. It's pretty spectacular. When you pull the rope and they go, you better have a good hold on the sled.
Hey Mac, I don't know if you said it and I missed it, or you didn't say it, but how did you get into all this?
Well, that's actually sort of an amusing story. Back in, it must have been about 2007, 2008, Ruth was trying to think of something to give me for my birthday. And I'm not very easy to shop for. Amanda's 2 sons are our godsons. And, we've known them all their lives, literally. And she figured it'd be fun to give me something for a bonding experience with them. So she cast about and said, oh yeah, I like dogs and all this sort of thing. So she found out about dog sledding, and from another friend, cast about and found the Cathers. She found a bunch of people that did it, that had packages where you could go up for a while. So she said, okay, and she talked to various people, and they felt like the best fit. So great. So she laid that on, and then we started to think about the logistics and the legalities of it. So 2 young kids, both young teenagers, and me going across an international border. What's wrong with that picture? So she figured that, that probably wasn't going to fly. So she figured that, you know, that Amanda should probably go with us. And I said, you know, if Amanda's going, you got to come too. And Ruth was very skeptical about the whole thing. She did not do cold well. And so, to make a long story short, the 5 of us went up there. We inhabited that relatively small cabin for a week and a bit. Had a great time. We came back down and decamped to our respective homes and decided that we really missed seeing each other all the time. So we built out another bedroom here in the basement of the house, and they moved in here. Amanda lived with us for 9 years. The boys, I think 6 and 7 or something like that, until they went off to school and what have you. So, you know, we were a blended family for quite a while as a result of being up there. So that's where it came about. It was great. And Ruth really took to it. I think as much as anything else, it's the people. The Cathers are marvelous people, and you know, they're very, very welcoming, and it's a very pleasant environment. So I would recommend it to anybody. It's not quite as isolated as it used to be. The first few years we were up there, there was absolutely no cell service up there. So, you know, you're disconnected. There are emergency, you know, there is an emergency number that people can call them, but they don't encourage people to be in constant touch. That is no longer the case. There is now cell service if you stand in the right place in the cabin, and it is like the right place. It's within 6 feet of this one point. But I don't know, actually that strikes me as a negative, but because it was nice to just completely get away.
The Club Med of the North.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it exactly Club Med. I mean, it's not no real electricity. No hot and cold running water. Cold water, and you keep a kettle on the stove all the time, so you've got hot water, and it also acts as a humidifier because it's incredibly dry up there. Whoops.
And it sounds like instead of relaxing, you're working your ass off, really.
No, not really.
Really?
No, because, you know, you typically go out on a run, you know, a run a day, and a run will be anywhere from 2 to 5 hours, depending how far you go. And that is, you know, getting out there, hooking up the dogs, and, you know, running them, and then coming back and putting them back in the yards and everything, and helping feed and one thing and another. Yeah, but you still got a fair amount of free time. And the evenings are very pleasant there. I mean, I say the Cathers are great people, but you still wind up with some time. You also, the days are a little on the short side up there. I think that typically when we go up there, about 10 hours of daylight, something like that. So you've got downtime.
What are you eating while you're there?
Food.
Oh, is it mutton or
no
dried reindeer?
Yeah,
or?
Yeah, right. Yeah, hardtack.
Yeah.
No, they have. I mean, unless you're out on the trail when you're in a different situation, but they cook every night, and actually, I mean, they have meals in the house, so you join the family for meals. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's gourmet food, but it's good.
Is it like chicken or beef or mashed potatoes or?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
One thing you don't get, fresh greens, not so much.
Yeah.
Because there's an interesting problem getting stuff to the Yukon. You can't take stuff like lettuce up there because it freezes en route. If they bring it in, they bring it in basically the inverse of a refrigerated truck. It's an insulated truck that's heated, so it doesn't completely freeze up.
But stuff like frozen peas and frozen corn is awesome, right?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Lots of that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I say, not gourmet eating, but it's good, and I'll tell you eat a lot because it's cold up there, and your body burns up energy like crazy. I was amazed at how much I ate when I was up there, and I lost weight.
And you can eat butter as much as you want, probably.
Well, yeah, my cardiologist might have something to say about that. But
oh, the fact that you're burning it doesn't help with the cardio effects of butter. I mean, I don't know.
Don't know.
Yeah. Because you need calories like crazy.
Yeah.
You usually find yourself drinking a lot as well when you're out in the really cold, clear weather. If it's not, it can be really, really dry.
It is so dry up there. It's incredible. Because when you stop for a picnic on the trail, frequently you'll make a fire and cook things over the fire. One of Ned's favorite tricks is to take like tinned chili or something like that, and you cut the lid, and then you just put the whole can right in the fire and let it cook. Works fine. But to start a fire on the trail, you just go out and you find some little spruce twigs and things like that, and they're so dry that they'll just start right up. So you can build a fire really easily.
Gordon, were you talking about drinking water or whiskey?
Water primarily. I remember being absolutely stunned by. I was right up the very north end of Norway in the winter one time, and just the amount of how dry you felt. I mean, it was really.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a lot cold. It's an actual desert, really. Because everything's frozen or dry. The air's really dry, and the snow. To me, who comes from the west coast of Scotland, the snow was dry as well. Really.
Oh yeah, it squeaks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was quite an interesting experience actually. You were drinking. It's almost like being in the desert. In like Africa, you were drinking that much water, especially if you're working hard.
Yeah.
Which you would be, rummaging the dogs about. Yeah,
it really dries you out. I was quite surprised.
So that would seem to counter the stereotype of the miners and loggers putting away vast quantities of whiskey and beer and other assorted stuff, because that dries you out.
It doesn't only dry you out, Dan. If you drink lots of alcohol, you chill out before you would dry out. It opens your blood vessels in your skin, so you're in a bad way if you drink. Not that much either. It's surprising how little alcohol it takes for you to get into real trouble when you're up that far north.
Yeah,
so that's a Hollywood thing.
Yeah,
must be. Yeah,
they said they have had a few people that wanted to have a few drinks before dinner, and Ned said he usually suggests that they don't want to do that, and if they insist, he lets them do it. And he said usually they do it once or twice, and then they figure out that it's not worth it because it dries you out really badly, and you wind up with a wicked hangover. I guess, I don't know. I haven't tried it, but
yeah. I mean, I've had people even in the west coast of Scotland when you go we went away on a works camping. There's a thing here called the West Highland Way, where you basically you go from Glasgow to Oban. It's about 50, 60 miles of trail, and you go away. A lot of work organisations, do it as a charity thing. Everybody will raise money and then they'll go and hike this thing. And there's always inevitably a few guys will get a bit of beer down them and go and sleep in their tent, and they're absolutely chilled and frozen to really quite badly frozen. And if it's a cold or wet, which it almost inevitably is in the west coast of Scotland in sort of early spring, they can be quite badly ill. You sometimes have to take them off the hill and take them home, or take them to into a hotel and put them in there to dry, to warm up and dry and get back to normal again. It's quite amazing how much a bit of alcohol adds to the exposure levels, if you're not careful with it.
Well, I'll take that advice. Anybody have any more questions for Mac? Oh, here we go. Uh-oh, here we go. You got to turn your mic on so we can see him. Here, there you go. Your mic is off, Mac.
There you go. I wanted to turn it off so I could call her. Come on. Come on. I know. Sleepy girl. Come on. Yeah, look at you.
Hello.
Come on.
What are their names?
Go. Come on. The husky is Cobalt, and this is Chance.
All right.
Who's Pushy. Okay, you want to? Here you go. Here you go. There's a good girl. Yeah.
What percentage of husky is Cobalt?
She's a husky.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like a pure thing, particularly.
A cure?
No, I say there's no such thing as a purebred husky.
Okay.
Because by definition, huskies are not.
Oh.
They're
is that right?
Yeah. They're a mix of a lot of things.
Huh.
But they're bred to pull. Actually, let me where'd it go? Let me share for just a second here again. There. This is a decent picture of her.
Not seeing it.
Oh, did it not share? Okay, here we go.
Or maybe you're spotlighted and so the share doesn't work.
Right, there you go.
Okay. Nice.
So that's her on the beach. She's been, as you can see from her legs, she's been running in the surf. Huskies in general do not like to get in the water. They really, really do not like getting in the water, but they think wading in it is just fine.
Do they cross? Are there creeks when you're up there, or are they frozen over?
Well, at least on Ned on the Quest one time, there was a creek that was not as frozen as he thought it was. And his team wound up going in, and he said he spent 8 hours building a big fire and keeping his team around it to get them dried off, because he didn't have a bunch of towels or anything. So he said that was pretty ugly. Yeah.
When you go out on the trails, is he in front? He or the other?
Yeah, usually they'll be in lead position. It depends. When they pick you up on the west side of the lake, they bring dog sleds over, and those are typically with 4 dogs, and then they'll have you drive them across the lake, and they're cruising along in the snow machine watching to see. And that's their evaluation process, to get some idea of do you have any kind of clue, or are you going to be hopeless?
So even a brand new person, they do that
Yep.
to them.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, they put them right on a sled.
Wow.
So they find out. Well, it's on the lake. You can't. It's difficult to get in a whole lot of trouble on the lake. So it's a controlled situation. Worst case, they come off the sled, and it's flat, so there's really very little danger of the sled overrunning the dogs or anything like that. So it's a good place to observe. I mean, they've been doing this for a long time, and I've actually talked to Ned and Janine a lot about how they do things and why they do things, and they've got it figured out.
And there's no whips involved with encouraging the dogs. It's all verbal.
All verbal,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I suspect that I don't know, I can't imagine putting a whip to a dog.
Yeah.
It's like as not they'd grab it and
Yeah.
take you off.
I'm about to say that you're liable to get whacked out your hand and handed back to you in lots of little bits if the final huskies.
Yeah, I mean they got a whole mouthful of big white things. They could do some serious damage.
I haven't seen the damage a determined husky can do to a door if it's shut behind the door. It wants to the other side. It wants to be on the other side of it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to start whipping them or beating them around. They're liable to have your arms off you.
Well, I have this. Let's see if this thing will focus at all. This is a.
You have to share your screen.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Get used to this yet. Okay, so I've got this object here, and you can see that the handle has been somewhat modified because this is a thing for removing. It's a ferminator, and she does not like it. So it was left around, and she chewed the end off it.
Any other questions for Mac or comments?
Do you with your dog, do you put her on a harness and let her pull you along on like a scooter, like what some of the people around about here do with them?
Not intentionally. She definitely can pull. Actually, both of them can. And we've got a harness that has a pull point that is sort of behind her shoulders, because at this point I don't believe in a choke collar at all. And there are definitely places where I've been towed up hills. Unfortunately, towed down hills as well. But
yeah. There's a couple not far from where I stay here. They've got a couple of huskies. I say one of them was found 50 odd mile away. But they have scooters for theirs. They just like a big scooter, and they got the dogs get hitched onto the scooters, and they take them up mountain bike trails and stuff like that. Let them run riot up and round about there.
Yeah, they're great. For training the dogs in the summer, they've got a couple of defunct ATVs.
Yeah, and just tow them around with that.
Which are the engines are toast, but who cares? The only problem they've got is they go through brakes like crazy.
Yeah, because you've got to keep the brake on all the time. That's right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. There's a unfortunately over here, I don't know what it's like in the US or Canada, but over here the husky has become a bit of a trendy dog to have as a pet. And there's a couple of organizations here that rescue them from care. And one of the guys that does it, you go around festivals or shows and whatever, and dog shows or whatever, and he's got a team of the huskies trained up that he takes with him to these events, just to raise awareness and raise money for his charity to look after the dogs. And he's brilliant at. He's been on. I know he's done a couple of the big races in Canada in the past, but he's made up some really crazy contraptions that he gets the dogs to tow about.
Well, that's they love to pull things. That's
Yeah,
what they were
he
bred
parks
for.
his, if it's a big enough field at the show, he'll park his van, which is like a Sprinter, a Dodge Sprinter.
Uh-huh.
He'll park his van in the middle of the field and get the dogs, to, 12 dogs
Sure.
to tow the van around,
Sure.
which is quite fun to watch. But yeah, he's quite good with those. They make some racket when they're all pegged out there along the side of the.
Oh yeah. Yeah, really.
Gas prices keep going up. We're going to need the dog sleds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking as well. Yeah.
It really. They're a very interesting breed. They're quite independent. They are not a cuddly dog by any manner of means. And in fact, I know quite a few of them, and a lot of dogs you come up to and they'll want attention, they'll want affection. Not so much. They'll come up and they'll probably take a sniff at you to see what you're about, but they're not necessarily looking for a lot of attention. They're quite independent.
What do they do if you try to pet them?
It depends on how much they've been socialized and how. A lot of them will just pull back and look at you like, what's your problem? And which is off-putting to a lot of people. A lot of people don't. They expect a golden retriever. It's like, yeah, okay, fine, give me attention. But different dog breeds are very different. And huskies are working dogs. That's what they're bred for. Especially the ones up there. I mean, they're not pets. And it does. I mean, especially if you're harnessing them or something like that, it definitely helps to talk to them and deal with them. And sometimes you have to sort of grab them by the muzzle and look them in the eye and tell them, hey, settle down. We're going to do this. But that's part of dealing with any dog, really. You got to communicate with them.
That whole thing is really a negotiation constantly, it sounds like. The whole.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to trust your leaders to take your command. Yeah. And some are better than others. And there are definitely times. There was one time when we had 5 sleds going out, and I was in the van in the back, and 4 of them went off to the left. My leader decided he was going to go to the right. Fine. So, slap on the brake, get them stopped, set the snow hook, go out there, take the leader, walk him across the unpacked snow, put him on the other trail, and he's like, what? Why? I want to go that way. No, we're going this way. Get back there, sled back up, and away we go. But it's yeah, it is. I mean, once I convinced him that no, it wasn't his choice, my choice. But as I say, that's true with any dog.
You've got to get yourself in the hierarchy there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, you got to become the lead dog.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, and I mean, we have had as many as 4 dogs here. And when the number of dogs outnumber the number of humans, you can have a problem pretty easily.
Can't be a democracy.
Well, they gang up on you.
Yeah. They outvote you. If it's a vote.
Yeah, except that my vote's more equal than their vote.
But in this house, it's a cat that rules.
Yeah, we had. When Ruth and I first got married, she brought a cat with her, and that was fine. But one of my dogs was terrified of that cat. Cat would sit on top of a bookshelf in the kitchen, and you had to go past the bookshelf to it was a low bookshelf to get to the back door and go in the backyard. He would not go past that cat. He had to be escorted by so he could go out the backyard.
I let my cat out the back garden, and the 3 or 4 dogs run about. Just our houses are, they're all the backyards look into a lane that runs along the back. And there's 3, 4 dogs in the area, and they're all barking and yapping away through the fences and everything. Let the cat out, silence. Because they've all had a run in with them over the years and just don't go anywhere near them now. So it's a good way of shutting them up in the morning. Just let the cat out. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments for Mac? That was really great, Mac. You've answered a childhood dream here.
Well, you book yourself an adventure with the Cathers.
What kind of money is involved with that? And I'm assuming it's going to be different when
It depends on
this is
how
all
long
over.
you're going to be there. I don't know. I think they've got pricing on.
Okay.
It's definitely by the time you get up there and stay for a while and travel and all, it's a few $1,000s.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cheap. But
How long did it take to get from Seattle to there?
well, we drove up to Vancouver, and we generally wind up staying a night in a hotel near the airport, and there are a couple of them that have parking so you can leave your car there. And then you fly up to Whitehorse, which is, they say, about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
It's a pretty small airport. There's Air Canada does serve it. I don't recommend them. There's an outfit called Air North, and it's the Yukon's airline, and that's what they do. And I guess there are some tricks, because Air Canada periodically has gotten up there and they didn't spring for the good jet fuel with the anti-gelling stuff. So they get up there and the plane sits there and gets cold, and that's it. You got to wait till it warms up again. So
Schoolboy error.
Yeah. Is there more than one flight a day?
Varies with time of year.
Yeah.
Usually it's like one round trip a day
Yeah.
rather.
Yeah.
And after the last couple of years, their schedule has been kind of strange.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think Ruth said they were flying every other day or something at this point.
All right. Anything else? Is that Gary? Did you raise your hand?
No, sorry, I was readjusting my lamp.
Okay. Okay.
You should know that a lot of Canadians don't particularly care for Air Canada either, for a whole variety of reasons.
Yeah, my wife has a good friend in Newfoundland, and she's had some interesting experiences on Air Canada trying to get back there and back again. She generally drives up to Vancouver, so she's not trying to do the international hassle.
All right. Well, let's move along then. Thank you.
You bet.